DETALKS, and with me, Mr. David Patterson of Lake Country Manufacturing, and we're going to talk about the Hdo Pads. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, this is
awesome. So, these we're going to talk about in this series the pads that we currently carry in store.
Yep.
So, those of you that are searching on the website, looking at the pads, want to know why, what, how, all that stuff, we got the man himself here to help answer those questions.
And hopefully I can.
So this first one, I hope you can too.
Yeah.
Hdo Pads.
So Hdo,
tell me about them.
Yeah, so this is a second version for our long throw pad, is what it was designed for. I'm sure everybody that's been polishing paint for the last couple of years knows what it was like when long throw polishers came onto our scene.
Yes.
It was a different animal.
It was. It generated a lot of heat.
It destroyed a lot of pads, and there was some learning curve in terms of how to use the tools, but also room for growth in pads and how to help get the maximum performance from that machine, but then make it the most user-friendly also. And that's our main, or one of our main goals when we come out with new products, is to add value to the detailer, to that person using it, and innovate and develop products that we think that you want to use and then have some real value to them. So the Hdo pad line was one of those. It stands for heavy duty orbital, and it has a couple different features that really make up what this pad is all about. And I think once everybody kind of gets an idea of them, they'll understand the system and understand why they work so well too.
Right. So one of the things is the dual density foam.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
That's what makes them different from the other lineup of other pads.
Yeah. Perfect example. So the dual density was
you guys
designed.
Can see that.
Yep. So the dual density was designed for a couple different reasons. So one is when you have a tapered pad, the face is larger than the outer diameter of the Velcro loop. So what that causes is an increased pressure around this ring, but maybe not as much pressure, or an uneven pressure on your outer ring, and it can cause pads to curve or cup or do a number of different things. Yeah. So by having that interface, you kind of spread out your platform a little bit for your downward pressure, and get a perfect balance in between your exact fit type pad that has an even pressure and a larger taper pad. So you get the benefits of both. And by having the dual layer, it really changes a lot of different things. Thin pads are popular right now, and thin pads are great because they dissipate heat well.
Yep.
And overall they work well, but the one thing that a thin pad doesn't have is it doesn't have weight, and it doesn't have weight distribution to rotate and work well on contoured and curved panels.
Right.
So by utilizing a little bit thicker of a pad, you have the proper weight. We weigh all of our pads when we're working on programs like this to make sure that they perform properly. But they have that weight and weight distribution. So they rotate on your curved panels where you typically have a little bit more problems, but they offer the same value of a thin pad. And what that does is the thin pad dissipates heat, but it also controls your horizontal movement. And when you have horizontal movement between those cell strands, what happens is you have molecular friction. So I think we've had this conversation before, and when you, the easiest way to think about it is taking a piece of sheet metal and bending it until it gets hot. That's essentially what's happening on those strands inside the foam pad while you're polishing. And that doesn't even include the surface friction, which creates the other part of your heat, or the heat from your Velcro hook and loop moving. But the inside structure of those materials moving around causes a lot of heat, and it can cause the strands to bend back and forth and degrade. No different than if you were sitting on a couch or sitting on your seat, and 10 years later there's a flat spot or a worn spot. Yep. Essentially, you're reducing that fatigue, you're reducing the heat that goes into it, and you're creating a pad that's going to last a lot longer, similar to the concept of not letting your motorcycle tires when you're racing go through heat cycles. So it kind of keeps the balance, keeps it uniform, offers consistent results, but also a consistent feeling, which is
Okay.
what's real interesting about
And
it.
it comes in this variety that we have in store. The only thing we didn't add to our lineup was the microfiber HDO cutter.
Yep.
Because we carried the microfiber.
Yeah.
But was there any difference for the HDO microfiber?
So the difference between the HDO microfiber is for one that it has a center hole, and it has a slight taper to the edge. Essentially to be part of the HDO line to make it a complete system. So in the United States here, the way that I've seen it is most detailers or paint correction specialists, they tend to know what they're using for the most part or have researched and will use different items. Whereas you go internationally and things need to be in a system. Otherwise it's hard to communicate how they're used properly.
Right.
And I think that applies to the United States too. I just think that because we're a little bit more advanced in detailing, like in the US, Australia, and parts of Europe, that we don't necessarily have as much of a problem with it. But when you get into some areas that have newer detailing,
you have to have that
the system is very important for basic understanding of it.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. But
so for those of you that have used used our Lake Country microfiber pads, you're more than welcome to supplement that into the HDO series. But for those of you that are overseas and need the complete system, that's what that microfiber HDO pad is for.
Yeah.
So that's like the top. That's your cutting. Then your blue is a light cutting.
Yeah.
And then orange is a polish, kind of a light cutting, like easy to polish.
Yeah, kind of a go-to polishing pad.
It's kind of a good in-between pad, all-purpose.
Yeah, so and that's the idea of it. So this system is a little bit different than what you're typically finding on the market because you're going to find a range of from cutting to polishing, whereas
any of those pads you can basically change.
You can slightly change them. I mean, minus the black, which you could do, but it just doesn't make sense. But with these pads, you can do, with these three pads, you can do a lot of different things. But the other thing is, while there are a lot of people that still like aggressive foams, aggressive cutting foams, myself and our team felt like the market is changing where people are using microfiber more and more. There are some advantages to very aggressive foams, and we still offer some of those foams, but for long throw tools, we find that microfiber is the go-to cutting pad, and it really offers the best value for that detailer or for the user because you're getting the maximum amount of cut, but then you're also getting a really great finish. So what we did with this line is we incorporated a microfiber as a cutting, and then a variation.
And that is a 5-inch.
Yeah. This one's a little bit smaller than the rest.
We grab a 6, so
we grabbed the wrong size, but then utilizing these pads as your polishing pads or as a light cutting pad if this isn't necessary, which is a little bit different than some of the other pads on the line. So when we get into the blue pad, this is a light cutting pad, but it's a super versatile pad. It's great for light cutting when the microfiber pad isn't needed, but it's also great for a one-step pad or an all-in-one pad, and it's also great for finishing on ceramic clears or high solid clears, so like your Mercedes-Benz or things like that. So the last two are going to be your go-to polish. You know, the orange is a go-to polish pad, but it also works as a phenomenal one-step pad. This is my go-to polish pad, and it finishes perfectly on 90% of vehicles.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I use this pad a ton. And then your black pad. This is typically for your final finishing, high glossing. I only use this pad typically when an orange pad doesn't finish, so when you're getting into your softer black or softer and dark color vehicles like Subaru and Honda and some of the Porsche, this pad is a go-to pad, and some guys say use a firm pad, but if you're using good abrasive, this is the most phenomenal glossing pad.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So that's the complete line for the most part.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I really like these pads because of its availability in the sense that you can utilize a polish with this pad and still get a great result. You can utilize an intermediate compound with a soft polishing pad and get a good result. That's one of the reasons I like this system, is you're able to change your level of cut or polish based on the foam.
Yeah, like
so
fine
to
tuning.
speak. Yeah. So if something doesn't work with the way you think it's supposed to, you can just tweak it a little and it still works beautifully.
Yep.
And you actually get a better result sometimes out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one of the unique things about the blue pad and the orange pad specifically, but this blue pad is very unique because it's very resistant to change the heat. So when you've used pads in the past where you start, which can be beneficial for certain situations, but on long throw machines, I'm sure you've used other foam pads that are started off relatively firm and then maybe 10 minutes in, the pad's very soft.
Right.
And typically that's because of the heat. Whereas the blue pad is extremely consistent. It's good at resisting that heat and changing. So it's super consistent for the user, and it offers that consistent result from panel to panel as you go, even when the pad is warming up and cooling down.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, sweet, man. Thanks for coming.
Oh, no. Thanks
And
for having me.
those of you that are interested in our Hdo pad, you can pick them up at the Rag Company. And if you want to learn more about Lake Country Manufacturing, you check out lakecountrymfg.com. And if you want to learn more about Lake Country Manufacturing on Facebook and Instagram, just search Lake Country Manufacturing, all spelled out. And if you want to learn about David and his travels and all the stuff he's into, check him out on Facebook and Instagram, David Patterson. And dude, thanks for coming and talking about this.
Thanks
I
for
love
having
it.
me. This is awesome.
This has been fun. So stay tuned right here for more Detox on the Rag Company YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, guys.